Timmy B, Fox Sports, Tim Brando. Been a couple of weeks we've had him, but it's always great when we do. Tim Brando joins us via the video link, and this is 365 Sports. Tim Brando from Fox Sports. There you are.
Hello.
How you doing? Yeah,
I'm
thank
great.
you.
How are you?
Yeah, there's that beautiful background with all that memorabilia and so much more. I know you did Boise State, and we'll get to that, and Ashton Jeanty and everything else. Sure. Had you ever done a Utah-BYU game? We are learning firsthand, aren't we, about the rivalry, and then, of course, Mark Harlan goes off, and your thoughts about that one?
I have not done the Holy War. That's one that has escaped me. I have done BYU and Notre Dame. That was pretty wild. That was one of the most memorable games, and I witnessed it from the sideline, generations ago when I was working at ESPN, CFA Primetime, before I went to the booth and before there was a college game day. So it's been that long. I've done a lot of BYU games, a lot of Utah games, but never BYU and Utah. So what Harmon did was inappropriate, should not have been handled that way. I'm glad that he apologized for it. The fact that your Mark had to come out and, say what he had to say was unfortunate, I think, because, officiating can be bad. And I thought it was pretty bad in my game this past Saturday and said so on the air. But that's not the job of the athletic director in that particular situation, Smoke. It's not. And certainly for the emotions to have gotten the better of him immediately after, that's really not the time to do it. It's bad enough when the coach does it, but when the director of athletics does it, then, that's even worse. So to say that the call that was in question was that bad, that wrong, we can discuss that. It certainly potentially changed the outcome of the game. I have empathy for the circumstances that Utah found themselves in, but lambasting the integrity of the league in such a public manner that quickly after the game, when you know it's going to go viral, you have to know it's going to go viral. That's inappropriate. It is.
Tim, you got to see Ashton Genty firsthand this week. I don't know if that's your first time. I'm very jealous you got to see him in person in a game because he is amazing to watch. What are your impressions? Do you have somebody you can compare him to? Because at the running back position, we've seen a lot of dynamic guys, but he's got something like at the next level, especially for a position that's been largely and I think incorrectly ignored in modern offenses.
Indeed, and the only guy I can compare him to is who I think he's potentially going to break the record of, and that's Barry Sanders. He has all of the requisite tools that Barry Sanders had. I might even suggest that he can run over more people than Barry. I think he may be stronger in the upper part of his body. Now, remember, the upper part of his body is still pretty low because he's 5'9". He's a little guy. But when you stand next to him, he's extremely small. I think 5'9" might even be generous. But the things that he can do and the skill set that he has with jump cuts, his ability to spin and get away from tacklers, I mean, he can do it. He's a true five-tool talent at running back. After witnessing him in person and seeing how committed to the ground game that program is, he's going to get hit a lot, and he's going to get hit for, a potential loss of yardage on a given play when they have that many people in the box. I mean, he's getting 8-9 in the box on a consistent level. They're playing man. Teams are playing man coverage and hoping that the quarterback misses people, which he kind of did in the Nevada game. Now, Nevada had some really bad breaks and turned it over themselves. Otherwise, they might have won that football game because Boise State did not play their best the other night. But Ashton Jeanty is such an out pitch that if you can just hang on and stay patient, he'll eventually win you the football game. Probably the biggest mistake was something Devin Gardner pointed out late. I'm amazed how many people that were watching LSU Alabama had tuned out of that game, had come over to our game because It was over early in the third quarter in Baton Rouge, and so I'll be interested to see what the overall national rating looks like. The overnights weren't bad, but the overall national rating might be pretty good. Probably the largest audience Boise State's had for a game since the Oregon game that they played very, very early in the season. But he had a fourth down and inches. Spencer Danielson did. He turned it down, decided to punt with about 3.5 minutes left, and the kid Brendan Lewis, who's an outstanding quarterback at Utah, at Nevada, he threw a touchdown pass and got him to within one score again. And they had just fumbled the ball going in at the one just prior to that. Otherwise, we might have been going into overtime. But Devin said, if I were Coach Danielson, I'd go for it here, even on his own 30-yard line, because you put the game away here. You put it away here if you do that. He says, that's when I'm probably up here and not down there. And at the time, I was supporting the coach's decision. It made for some good debate with Devin. But shortly thereafter, when that touchdown pass was thrown, I said, well, partner, I think your statement a moment ago that seemed wild, it sort of resonates right now. So that's how good Genty is. Unless you're trying to run him wide, like on a stretch play or an option pitch, if you just have him run between the tackles, you're not going to stop him before he gains a yard or more every time he has it. And they only needed inches on that play. I think he should win the Heisman if Travis Hunter doesn't. Put it that way. I can't tell you who I'm voting for as a Heisman voter. Travis Hunter is going to have some high-profile games moving forward. And because of the incredible numbers of snaps that he is part of and his big play capability, Colorado, and they're in the hunt, too, to win the whole thing. I wish they'd move the Heisman voting back now that we have a full-scale college football playoff. Don't you? We ought to move it back till after the playoff for sure now, because there's so many consequential games that will be missing. It's not just like we're missing the title game anymore. We're missing all of the consequential games of the playoff, and that's unfortunate. But I would vote for Genty if not for Hunter. But I think the other guys, including Dylan Gabriel, as much as I like Dylan, and I think Dylan's the best quarterback in America, without a doubt. I really believe that. He's the best college quarterback in America. Shedeur is great, but he's not done for his team individually what Dylan has done for him. But Genty, to me, is the best overall college football player in the game at his position. He just doesn't play two like Travis Hunter does.
Tim, you mentioned LSU and Alabama. Jalen Milroe thought at the beginning of the season to be in the Heisman race. Hasn't really been so much, but had the type of performance that really gets you sparked in talking about him again. And obviously, Bama as a team to roll into Death Valley and win big like that. What were your thoughts coming out of that one? Was it more about LSU? Was it more about Alabama? Where'd you find yourself?
It was more about LSU. I mean, how could you not know that they were going to just look at the blueprint that Texas A&M gave them in the second half when they were forced to make a quarterback change, and did so. And LSU could not adjust, could not defend the running quarterback. And Milroe had done the same thing to them a year ago in Tuscaloosa. Now, we all thought that this LSU defense was a lot better than the one that was in Tuscaloosa last year. And we certainly thought, even if they weren't that much better, they would have learned during an open date what went wrong with Texas A&M in the second half. And they didn't do that either. Was the blocking really good for Alabama? Sure it was. But, I mean, for LSU not to know after the opening series and the second series and the third and the fourth that this was not going to stop until you adjust, man. And a lot of people were high on Blake, and deservedly so, given the way they had played in a couple of games, particularly that game in Arkansas, which I think everyone thought might be closer. And they did the job in that game. I think a lot of people felt like LSU had addressed those issues and had actually gotten better without Perkins than they were with Perkins. Well, you know, they were grasping at air and were leaving holes that were the size that a freight train could go through. And certainly Jalen Milroe got through pretty quickly. So Alabama is in the playoff for me right now in my standings. And they likely will get there if they win out. But are they that much better than LSU? I don't think so. but they were made to look that way by a pathetic performance by that defense and some really poor coaching. This is the first time that Brian Kelly really legitimately, in my mind, should shoulder a lot of blame. I mean, a lot of blame with an open date for that defense to be that bad. Now, conditions were such with the rain, softer track. Alabama's a power downhill run team, a bit more than LSU, although Durham is running pretty hard for LSU now. He had a couple of big runs in the game early, but LSU is not a team that, I mean, a slower track is going to hurt them in the passing game. And Nussmeier is a fixture back there. His inability to run was as much a part of the problem for their offense as Milroe's ability to run was for their defense.
Tim, with Georgia and Alabama now with 2 losses, the SEC has these teams stacked with a lot of, 2 losses, Texas and Texas A&M, and one other team right now with just the one, Tennessee. They're all, I mean, Tennessee plays Georgia. Right. Is it must win the rest of the way for Kirby and the Bulldogs?
I think so. And, I had 5 SEC teams getting in my preseason college football poll, as you guys remember. I had 5 of them in. And I think it included Missouri, which is now obviously, out on the outside looking in a very big way. I thought for sure that they'd get 5 in. I don't think they'll get more than 4 now for sure. There's no way they get more than 4 in. At where we sit right now, I'd have to say Alabama is in. Ole Miss is in. Obviously, if you look at the 3rd and the 4th, it's got to be Tennessee first, right? It's got to be Tennessee first. And then your 4th team is either going to be Georgia or Alabama, depending upon how these Georgia or who was the one I was leaving out? There's
Texas.
Another one I'm leaving. Texas.
Texas and A&M.
Texas is clearly the best team in the league. I mean, they're the best team in their first year in the league. They're the best team. So Texas has got to be there. And then you're looking at Tennessee, Alabama, and Ole Miss. And so Georgia or Bama, either one of those teams lose, they're done. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't see a 3-loss team right now, given what we're seeing elsewhere. The issues here for the SEC are that the parity around college football is so understandable now for even the CFP, okay, as gutless as that committee has been in the past. I don't think that you can look around the country and not see how many other great teams are out there. And they're not all in the SEC or the Big Ten. There are a lot of really good teams outside of those 2 leagues that are far more deserving than a 3-loss Georgia or a 3-loss Alabama. So to me, if one of those 2 teams have 3, they're done. They are done.
Tim, I need you to make an argument for me why Penn State, even though they only have 1 loss, should not have the same kind of scrutiny that Army, Boise State, or Wazoo would have.
Because they're so good on the defensive end of the ball, and because they're in every game, and their offense has let them down. Kotelnicki had an awful game play calling, and I thought he was the strength of what they were like in the beginning of the year when they looked so good at the beginning of the season. If you recall, I thought West Virginia might beat them to start the year, and they got absolutely boat raced by them. And I thought Andy Kotelnicki was a great addition. It's clear that not having him hurt Kansas, particularly early in the season, if not now, they're coming around now, but they got to win out even to get to a bowl, and they've been really a disappointment up until recently in the Big 12. But their defense is just next level, and I think that's a lot of it. Now, they're not pretty to watch by any stretch, but their defense has been outstanding, and I think that's going to carry them. Now, the schedule in and of itself isn't the strongest. I'll give you that. But the case for Penn State would be the same case that you'd have for a team that maybe you think is overrated in the SEC. It's not unlike Alabama's. The metrics are on their side, okay? Mm-hmm. The Big Ten metrics for their teams, because of the level of the metrics, the way the analytics work for the committee members to look at, even with a lesser schedule than a lot of other teams in the Big Ten, it still measures out to be, from an analytical standpoint, in front of the papers that those people are looking at, it looks better than a second or a third team out of either the ACC or the Big 12. And that's what I'm concerned about. The Big 12 has now begun to cannibalize the way we thought that they might. Iowa State's 2 straight losses. We're going to see them this week. They may be done already. We'll see how they perform in this game with Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not a very good team, so even if they beat them, they're not going to get much out of it. They do get Farmageddon at the end, which is a saving grace, does give them hope, okay, because they get Kansas State at the end, but they're going to need Kansas State to take care of business themselves. And they've got one this week that, could be tough on them. And they've been close to losing more games besides the ones they have. So, and BYU is without question the most vulnerable of the unbeatens when you look at the way that they won most recently. So that hurts the Big 12 teams that don't win the Big 12 championship. And in the ACC, it's a similar story when you think about it. Miami having stubbed their toe, my hope was that Miami would win out. And I said so when I ranked them where I did in the preseason. Because they haven't, okay, now they have to win the ACC championship in my mind if they want to get in and win out. But who else do you take, okay, from potentially from the ACC? I don't think the second place team is going to have any better of a chance measuring up against those metrics I was discussing that prop up Penn State. I don't think they'll have as much of a chance even as the Big 12, really, when you think about it. Because I don't think the ACC from the bottom to the top is as strong a league as the Big 12.
Jim Brando with us, Fox Sports. You mentioned Iowa State. How far out in advance do you know when you're going to get a game? Is that there's some games maybe well in advance or what?
Well, the earliest we can find out is today for a game a week from Saturday. And
right.
We just did. Devin and I found out. And this is the situation the Big 12 finds itself in. I thought for sure we'd be in a 6-day hold again for the game that's in that primetime window in the Big 12. Fox has decided not to put us on that game. We're going to be doing Michigan and Northwestern at 3:30 in the afternoon on September the 23rd. Just found that out right before I came on with you guys. And I'm going to tell you, and more than likely the reason for that, I don't know because I'm not privy to what their selection is for that week. I know what ours was last week, and we weren't going to get that Kansas State game if we just were not going to get that game. So we get Iowa State and Cincinnati. And Iowa State is just barely hanging on to a possibility of getting in the postseason. Well, that following week, Colorado is going to get another key matchup in the afternoon. Brock and Jason will be there, I'm sure. There's another window for prime time, and we're not going to be there. So rather than being on Fox in prime time on the 23rd, Devin gets to see his alma mater play, which I know is cool for him.
Wow! And
it's always great to be in the big house. So I'm excited about going back to Michigan. But they're Michigan. They attract a lot of viewers, and the game has to be on FS1 because CBS and NBC share the second and third picks. Okay, and those games and those windows cannot have a competing Fox game in that afternoon 3:30 window. Okay, we have to clear that out. So it has to be on FS1 if Fox is going to have a Big Ten game, and Devin and I get to do it. So I think that should probably tell you whatever game is going to be in that Fox window at 7:00 on the 23rd. It'll probably be either the third or fourth game in the league that week. That's the only thing that I can surmise would have us moving to FS1 for the 23rd.
Tim, Mike Norvell started his staff rebuild this week by letting both coordinators go. And one of them, obviously, Alex Atkins, offensive line coach, Ron Dugan's a wide receivers coach. Probably more coming. If you're Mike Norvell, where do you start rebuilding this staff to come back from what I will tell you is the worst sequel since Godfather 3?
Well, part of this was, we'll start with the decision to go with Uiagalelei and making that commitment. I don't know what they saw in DJ to believe that he was the right call. I mean, he had a good season at Oregon State a year ago, but it wasn't like he tore the roof off the sucker. And a couple of games they won despite him. Jonathan Smith got the job at Michigan State, so good for him. He got something out of Oregon State's season a year ago, and deservedly, by the way. Michigan State's had a decent year in his first season there. And the kid that was backing up DJU, Aiden, a young player that was raw, has done okay for Michigan State this year. So I don't know why they went with Uiagalelei there. I don't know how, but on the basis of how he rated coming out of high school and the can't miss kid that he was supposed to be, sometimes these guys don't pan out. They just don't. But the other factor is we were all heaping praise, if you recall, last year on Florida State for its masterful use of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Well, the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. When you do that well in the portal, and by the way, Clemson, we admonish them for not going to the portal at all, right? But right now, Dabo's getting sort of the last laugh on that because at least he still has a prayer now. Florida State does not. So I think you got to rethink, how you're building a program. And I don't know who's playing the role of general manager, but most of these programs now, fellas, have guys that are in roles of GM. In fact, they even have on their office doors, general manager written when you go into the football facilities. And the coaches are getting a lot of them from the NFL, guys that used to work in NFL organizations or come into college to perform the same duties really for the head football coach. It's all about trust, and it's all about, I think, looking at the numbers and the amount of money that you have available, and then how many guys that you're going to bring in from a recruiting freshman class that you want to have as the foundational aspects of your program. And clearly, Florida State threw all that out, and they tried to do what Dion did and didn't do it very well. So that's the answer, I think. They've got to make some adjustments, look in the mirror, and see if they found the enemy, because the enemy was themselves.
Tim, last thing for you. Is this season, now that this is the first year of the 12, is it made it better? Has it made college football better? Because, my goodness, some teams with 2 losses would be done.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely it's better. I mean, a lot better. And the reason for channel surfing is a lot larger now. As I said, I can't tell you, being a Louisiana native, how my phone was blowing up with disappointed Bayou Bengals leaving the stadium saying, hey, we just got back to our tailgate in the rain, turned on the game, and this Genty kid's unbelievable. So you might want to, understand that watching all of college football is really important today, because there are talented guys and teams that are out there that you may not be aware of. Like I got this today from a disgruntled Notre Dame fan. Okay, he was clearly pissed off that I had Indiana as highly rated as I did. And if you guys look at it, you'll see where I've got them. I've got them way up there. Okay, way up there. And people say, well, who have they beaten? All right, the schedule was weak. That's not Kurt Signetti's fault. I know this. They absolutely trucked Nebraska, forced their head coach to make a coaching change with his offense and bring Dana Holgorsen in after they absolutely hammered the Cornhuskers. And the very next week, Nebraska could have, maybe should have beaten Ohio State. Okay, so Indiana, to me, looks damn good. Mm-hmm. And if somebody says, well, they barely beat Michigan, well, it's November. Michigan's good. They're the defending national champs. The guys that are still there, they care. It's harder to win games in November when you're undefeated and you're the target of every team. And by the way, if you don't play your best game and you still win, that's another sign that your program has come of age. A lot of teams that haven't been there and done that before have to learn to win games like that when they play ugly. And Michigan forces you to play ugly. And the thing I can't get rid of with Notre Dame, and I told the guy this, I do know this. He said, I guess Timmy's not watched enough of Notre Dame. I was like, yeah, I've watched enough. I've watched enough to know that you've got one of the worst home losses in college football. I've watched that much. So, take your shamrock and put it where the sun don't shine. Indiana is undefeated. Okay, they're 10-0. And to me, 10-0 should matter to people. Just like I was saying a year ago, Florida State is 13-0. It should matter. It still matters to me. And with the schedules the way they are, with the realignment, the one unfortunate thing about it, guys, is every schedule is not created equal. Every 11-0, every 12-0 is not created equal. But if you've got a brain and you know football and you've seen enough of a team, you should know who's legit and who isn't. All right, I'm here to tell you, Boise State is legit. They have more sacks than any team in the country. Got the best 2 defensive ends, rush ends that you'll find. They're 3 deep at linebacker in the middle. Their nose tackle is a magnificent talent. Their most vulnerable area is the secondary. But the secondary doesn't have to defend for very long because they're getting sacks at a rate no other team in college football is. So they're going to be a problem. And if they happen to move, exponentially forward, like they were 12, I had them 12 for like 2 weeks before they actually got into the 12th position in the AP poll and now the college football standings. But I have them at 10 now. I've got them moving up even further, and if they do what they're supposed to do in the last 3 weeks of the season, they could get as high as 8 or 7. And I'm telling you, that is a dangerous place for them to be if they happen to get a ranking that's that high, especially a team that's not in the Power 4 to get a rating that's that high and have an opportunity to play. Can you imagine them getting a game at the Blue Field in the playoff? If that were to happen? I mean, my God, if they could get to the 8 hole, that's what they want, is to get to the 8th position so they can host a college football playoff game. And I'm telling you, if they do that, you could get ready. They could make the semifinals now. In a heartbeat, they could make the semifinals.
Well, and honestly, thanks for the time, Tim, as always. Appreciate it. You being available, video and everything was that it would be good. It would be nice. I know the Blue Bloods wouldn't want this, but I would, is that teams like a Boise State or even a BYU or maybe, let's say, Army, if that even happens,
I'm all in on Army now.
Yeah.
I would love to see Army pull this off. If they could run the table and have a goose egg at the end of their record, that's what I'm saying to you, a team that is in the position. Okay, and this is going to be the thing to watch. I'm glad you mentioned Army. What if, both Georgia and Alabama dropped a game and they were to both get in at the expense of a team like Army? How grotesque would that be?
Yeah.
I actually wouldn't mind seeing it happening because once again, we could just absolutely, go nuclear on the egregious actions of the College Football Playoff Committee. And I've got no problem doing that.
All right.
No, actually, our best ever Brando segment, and we've done some great ones, but the one that did the best on YouTube, over 100,000 views, was when you called out the committee last year.
Yeah. Well, get ready because there could be the sequel. We could have the sequel.
So I'll just root for
Rant 2.0.
I'll root for chaos because it was great for us.
Tim, one last thing, just a quick answer if you don't mind, from Surfer Boy 3000. Yeah. Which is the loudest stadium you have ever done a broadcast? Is it Tiger Stadium in Baton or Death Valley, or is it Neyland and Knoxville? Is there one in particular? A&M?
I'd have to go probably A&M. I've had LSU, but the games that I've had with LSU have always been daytime games, and it's just not the same when you do a game in the daytime. Tennessee with Peyton Manning would be a close second, and that was his last home game that he ever played in a Tennessee uniform. But Texas A&M in the old stadium at College Station, my goodness, incredible. I'll never forget doing the Hurricane Bowl with Lee Corso in 1988. And in Texas, you'll remember that was when Hurricane Gilbert was heading for the Texas coast, and then it moved away and didn't get there. It was sunshine and blue skies back in September of that season. And Jackie Sherrill called out Bill Curry for not bringing his team in. So they rescheduled it for after Texas and A&M and after the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. They played it the first week in December. And Lee and I went in and did the game. They called it the Hurricane Bowl. And boy, oh boy, was it loud. That was, as it turned out, it was Jackie's last game because of the NCAA issues that he was in. But boy, was it loud that night. And for me, that was the loudest. And I did a touchdown Jesus game with Notre Dame undefeated against Pitt when Mike Gottfried was coaching in '89. Vince Dooley and I did that game, and Notre Dame Stadium could not hold a candle to the A&M Alabama game that we had in '88.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy your next weekend. Tim Brando with us, Fox Sports. Appreciate his knowledge, insight, opinions. He gives those, of course, too. And thank you very much for him being a part of the show.